This is a special bonus edition of Judaism Unbound, Elul 2025, Chiasm. Welcome back, everyone. I'm Lex Rofberg.
And I'm Wendie Bernstein-Lash.
And we are so jazzed to be back with you as we journey our way through the month of Elul, our on-ramp Chala month, like holiday, but a whole month, our on-ramp month into Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, where we get introspective, we look inward, we think about the spiritual work we want to be doing ourselves, we think about what we want to be doing for our communities to better our world. All of those things are in play during the month of Elul, and Wendie Bernstein-Lash and I are the Judaism Unbound shepherds through this month. Our first Shabbat gathering was really, really sweet. We have a second one coming up that we hope that you'll come to in just a few days. So head to judaismunbound.com/ELUL to sign up for it. You'll have a chance to share the things that you're thinking about this Elul, hear from others, look at some texts together, have some great conversations. We hope to see you there. And also, throughout the month, we have a wonderful email list where Emma Newberry, our program associate, is sending out amazing articles and resources and videos and all sorts of spiritual tools for you to play with during the month of Elul, and also to spark your own creative practices. So you can sign up for that email list. It's not every day, it's a couple times a week, but it's super juicy and wonderful, and you can sign up by heading again to judaismunbound.com/ELUL. But for today, for our conversation in this mini episode of our podcast, we wanted to check in. We wanted to revisit a theme that is always operating for us, but not always super visible, which is the flow of time, and not only on like a weekly basis, the flow of time with Shabbat and the rest of the week, not even just on a yearly basis with the holidays, but actually on a 7-yearly basis. The Shemitah cycle, the sabbatical year cycle that the Torah describes as this ongoing relationship to the earth and to one another, where basically on a 7-year flow, the Bible commands that debts be remitted, that we sort of reset any debts that we had with one another, clear those, and also that our land rests. Those are really pivotal commandments that we can look at and apply to our world today and notice that we actually are inhabiting a time and a place, not just, our country, the whole world, that is deeply in need of radical transformation. And the Shemitah cycle, if we were to actually inhabit it, would allow all of us to create a world together that actually did a much better job of caring for those in need, resetting economically so that those who are struggling can struggle less and those who are at the top are able to allocate some of their bounty to the rest of the world. And also, we could be in real right relationship with our earth, which a lot of us really aren't. And so that's a little context. And we, through Elul Unbound, have been taking the Shemitah cycle really seriously. And you might have expected, because of all of what I just said, like, oh, maybe we're about to start a Shemitah year. We're not. We are about to start a year that is as far away from a Shemitah year on either side, before it or after it, as it can be. We're about to start the 4th year, which has 3 full years on one side and 3 full years on the other side, before and after Shemitah. But that actually sort of calls us to continue a conversation we've been having about what would it mean if, not just in our connections to agriculture, not just in our connections to the world and to justice, but also in terms of how we relate to Jewish time, if we noticed we're about to be in a year 4 kind of year. We last year were in a year 3 kind of year. Would something be different about our lives if we had a year 1, a year 2, a year 3 mood or flow in the way that our weeks have, a Sunday, Monday, Tuesday? Like when you say I have a case of the Mondays, that means something to people. You understand that means like, oh, I'm not feeling great because Monday is the beginning of the week and you got all your work week ahead. We don't have, I've got a case of the year 1s. Like or the A years, if we were doing like A, B, C, D, E, F, G. We don't have any associations at all for the flow of 7 years of time. And I would argue that our society is falling short because we're unable to think on that large scale, especially on the front of climate change. We are so committed to thinking only in the short term and only in, at best, sort of a 1-year interval that we lose sight of the longer flow. And so we're starting a 4th year. That's a chance to think about sort of medians, middles, what it means to be in a middle state. We started that last week, but Wendie, can you continue it for us? Help us dive into this year 4 that we're about to start.
Yeah, I love that we revisit the Shemitah every year, coming back to it, and that this is the middle year, perfect time for us to be looking at middle and what it means to be sustainable. As you said, last week's podcast, we put a lot of energy in beginnings and we put a lot of energy in the ends. We don't usually put a lot of energy in the middle. And so we have an opportunity to do something this year where we put energy and focus into the middle of the Shemitah cycle. I think that fits really well with the concept of Shemitah, which is really about sustainability. How do we live in right relationship with the earth? We let it have some fallow time. Do we live in right relationship with buildup of power and power dynamics? We release people from, debts. Those are all the biblical ways that we do it. But how are we going to do it now? What's it look like to actually be on a journey and to be in the middle of that journey? Great opportunity this year. What does it look like for you? I'm speaking to the listeners. What does it look like for you to be in the middle of this?
Absolutely. And last week in the 13 attributes conversation we had, we talked about the notion of chiasm. There's in many contexts Jewishly, this fancy religious studies word chiasm comes up. But basically, like if you have a poem and the rhyme scheme is A, B, B, A, like the first line rhymes with the fourth and the second rhymes with the third. Or if you get longer, A, B, C, B, A. So the 1 goes with 5, the 2 goes with 4, the 3 is on its own. When you have an odd number, so when you have 7 of something, you get A, B, C, D, C, B, A. The first thing and the seventh thing kind of correspond in certain ways. Second and sixth, third and fifth, and then the fourth is on its own. We're about to start that 4th year, and if you visualize it as like a pyramid, the 4th becomes the top of the pyramid. You've climbed up a stair step each time. The 4th is the crest, and then you've got, 3 steps up towards it, 1, 2, 3, and then 3 steps downward, 3, 2, 1. Which also I'd add, if this sounds like Lex, you're making up a bunch of like weird new symbology. Like I haven't heard people talk about this. Well, you have seen a menorah, probably. And a menorah, which in its first iteration, before there was a holiday called Hanukkah, was 7 branches. So this 7 notion is all over the place Jewishly if we know where to look. One of the places it is as a 7-branched candelabra in the temple. And I think most of us, for most of our lives, maybe all of our lives, haven't asked, like, why is that shape special? Like, why that shape? And when I say that shape, I mean the sort of looping connections you have between, like, if you were to draw a menorah, you can draw kind of a big U from the 1st to the 7th candle. You can draw another big U from the 2nd to the 6th, another big U from 3rd to 5th, and then you have a vertical line going through all of it in the middle. That's the 4th one. This is a podcast medium where we're talking, and it's hard that I'm giving all this visual stuff. But if you need to, like, draw that out. Because if I were to say to somebody, hey, you have no associations at all, make a visual manifestation of a 7-branched chiasm, of an A, B, C, D, C, B, A. I believe what that person would create is a menorah. That's just what it looks like. And I think we're supposed to notice that, but we've sort of erased any notion of that, even as in our liturgy. If you look at the 7 blessings of the Shabbat Amidah, the 7 blessings on the 7th day, there are ways in which this chiasm seems to operate. The 1st and 7th have certain things in common. The 4th is the blessing about Shabbat that is kind of the thesis statement, and that gets to be the vertical line of the menorah. With Hanukkah itself, the oil lasted 8 days, according to the myth, but we didn't make an 8-branched thing. We made a 9-branched thing. And you could say, oh, well, you need one candle to light the others. There wasn't one candle to light the others in the original. So it seems like we made that conscious choice because we wanted to have that same visual of, in this case, 1, 9 connected to each other, 2, 8, 3, 7, 4, 6. And then in the Hanukkah context, the 5th is the vertical in the middle. And yes, I'm aware that there's menorahs that are shaped other ways. I would actually argue that maybe we want to revisit all of those creative menorahs or establish new meanings for them, find new symbologies for them, because there's such power in that initial 9-branched menorah version. And so if we were to understand this year we're going into as like, oh, wow, this isn't the beginning, this isn't the end, but it is the crest year. This is a peak year. What would change about it? What would we do with it?
I would just want to add that I hadn't thought about this before, but I think you could actually say, what is Judaism about? It's about middles. Because we have the 13 attributes, there's a middle. We have Shabbat, 7 days of the week, there's a middle. These are not, numbers that they're prime numbers, right? You can't easily divide them. And it's like, well, maybe there's that hidden code in there that we haven't been realizing. And I love when people have looked at the Torah.
613 is also a prime number.
There you go. The number of commandments. That's a pretty big prime number. But if you look at the middle of the Torah, people spend a lot of time looking at what's the middle line, what's the middle Torah portion, and what's the actual middle letter. It's a Vav, which is this connecting letter. It means and. This and that, you put a Vav in there. Maybe we need to relook at some deeper meaning of Judaism, which is about middles.
Yeah, and last year when we started our middle last year, right? Like if we were going to break this 7 years down, last year when we were starting year 3 of the Shemitah cycle, we were like, this is kind of the beginning of the middle. If you're doing the first thing out of 7, it's like, oh, that's new. We're doing the first thing. The second is still kind of new. It's a little less new, but it's the second time. The first, non-first. Once you're in the third, you've established a pattern. You've reached kind of, oh, this is something that one does. It's not just we did this once or twice. The third time it makes it more coherent. That's why a lot of stories involve 3 of something. 3 little pigs, 3, like it gives you 2 parts of the story that are preamble, and then the third is the punchline. But in a 7 context, the third, it creates like, yes, we're building something longer, but it's the beginning of the middle. The 4th year is the middle of the middle. It is the centerpiece. I bring that up because I think we're not taught to do that Jewishly. As much as I think this was the original thinking behind the menorah, I can't prove it to anyone. This is not like something scholars all agree. Like I'm kind of pulling this out of my ass, but I do think it's true. I do think that this was part of what undergirded that menorah shape. What has not soaked into Jewish memory is the sacredness of middles. If you ask people like, what are the special days of our holidays, the 7-day ones, so Sukkot, Passover, it's the beginning and the end. Those are the ones that are quote unquote Yom Tov, good days. Those are the ones that are elevated, that have special rules. And the middle days, they're called just like the middle days. What is interesting about them is that they are not the beginning or last days, but they're not elevated. It's not like the 4th day of Sukkot has anything special about it. It's not like the 4th day of Passover has anything special about it. And by the way, part of why we've lost this is that we've made both of those festivals 8 days instead of 7 because of this notion of a 2nd day Yom Tov. And so when you're an even number, you no longer have a clean middle anymore. And so noticing anything about it becomes harder to do. And so that's part of why I am very stringent in being a 7-day holiday person. It's not just that I want to do less holiday. It's that it has a middle and it allows me to be like, oh, day 4, this is the peak of the holiday. This is a check-in moment. Like there was a beginning, there's going to be an end, but there's a middle. There's not really a middle if something is 4. If there's a 3, there's a second movie that's the middle. We talked about that last week. And so I relish this 4th year. And it is a rebellious act. This is not like in line with how Rabbinic Judaism has thought about itself. I don't want to pretend that, yes, Judaism Unbound is just sort of doing something that many others have. We're doing something Jewishly countercultural, like countercultural within Jewish tradition, and articulating there should be more meaning to this middle portion, and especially to the 4th out of 7. I don't have a so what from that, but my hope for this coming year, I'm going to try once a month to have a practice where I actually hold the power of this year and the ways in which this is what makes the Shemitah cycle. Like, if the 7-year cycle is going to actually work, if it's going to be anything, that's not determined by how you started. It's not determined by like year 1 and year 2. And it's also not determined by how you finish in the penultimate year, the 6th, and the ultimate year, the 7th. But like, that is our task this year. Hold that we are in the part of the Shemitah cycle that will determine whether this whole 7 years actually was anything. This is where we will determine if, when the next Shemitah year rolls around, we can say authentically, we just sort of accomplished something. We did something special over the preceding years.
You know, I'm kind of tying together this with the last Elul Unbound mini podcast and the first one where we looked at balance and kind of self-care. So can we figure out how to be in balance? Because there's a lot of energy put in the beginning of something, and then there's a lot of energy put in the end. So I think the beauty of the middle is this is the place where we learn how to be in balance with it and not feel like we have to overdo because we're starting it. This is the place of living life more, which is the reality of it. What is it like to be honoring Shemitah even in the middle? What is it like to have your life feel sustainable, your Shemitah practices, your ecology practices, like how can you make it be that it doesn't have to be the perfection you strive for at the beginning and the, oh, thank God it's over with at the end.
I think that's a great point. And in my backyard, my wife and I, Valerie, we planted a couple trees recently. We actually planted them a year ago. One of them did not succeed. They're apple trees. One of them is a year old and it's going strong, and the other we planted this year. And so I have to go out and water the trees regularly, right? That act is creating the reality where in the Shemitah year, those trees will be able to rest. That land will be able to rest. If I don't do this watering now, because they haven't yielded any fruit yet, right? They will. The timeline works very well. Like in their 3rd-ish year, they will yield fruit, maybe 3rd, 4th, and that will be just before the Shemitah year hits. And so this is the work, right? This is what will allow Shemitah potentially to actually be a thing that happens. Like, I can only let that land rest in an active way if before that I haven't been resting it. And so I'm jazzed about that. So I'm really on board with what you said, that Judaism is about middles. I think that's another way of putting what people often talk about, which is like, Judaism has rules for everything, legalistic, like it's into the nitty gritty. We have rules for tying our shoes and, what we do when we wake up in the morning and when we go to bed. Like, we have all sorts of legalities, but even if they're not legalities, we have all sorts of customs and things to do for the stuff in our lives that is not exciting and interesting necessarily, but is part of the flow of our lives. That's the middle, right? That's not the sexy beginning or end. It's not, if this were a TV show, the pilot or the finale, right? Like, what's the name for the 5th episode in a 24 episode show? Like, there's no thing for that. It's just the 5th episode. And those are what, again, makes the entire thing work. And so my hope is that we can take a second and notice, like, what in our lives, whether it's the tree that I'm watering regularly or relationships I'm building that are not new and also not super old, like, what are the things that I can hold as in their middle status right now? Last year, I talked about the 2nd mile of the 5K. I guess the 2nd, 3rd, 4th kilometer of the 5K. I mixed systems there. But like, the 2nd mile in a 3.1 mile race was always the hardest mile when I ran cross country. It's the part that determines whether I was going to have a good race or not. It's not the last half mile of my kick. I can pick up a little bit of time there. It's not how I start either. But what in our lives is in a middle state right now? And relatedly, what in our lives is at risk of being sort of forgotten or ignored because it's not fresh and new, and it's also not super old?
What a great invitation to explore that which usually does not get airtime. And for us to look around and elevate what we're already doing in middle places of a cycle, to simply appreciate the regularity of that center portion. I actually just wanted to go back when you have these long festivals and you have the beginning and the end. I don't think of it as cramming stuff in the middle. That's like the release place for me. It's like, okay, it's not an actual holiday.
Yeah, sorry, I was referring specifically to like Jewish professionals who don't work on the days that are
Oh,
Yom
right,
Tov.
right. Well,
but I think you're right. That's how a lot of people experience it.
Yeah, I used to work in the Jewish world, and so it's true. You got the day off on those holidays, and so that is different. But for me, it's like, oh, well, life gets to happen. There aren't restrictions. So I think it's turning it around, like to really like dive in and enjoy the middles that we might have passed over.
Absolutely. Maybe this whole year we should be saying, so there's a special greeting for the middle days. I'd argue it's special. I think you use it because you're kind of supposed to not say Chag Sameach. Like with these holidays, you say Chag Sameach on the days that are Chag, that are elevated, or good Yontif, Yontif being Yom Tov, good day. The middle days, you say Moadim L'Simcha. Basically, hope you're having a joyous holiday season. It sounds like the Christmas season when I translated it into English. Moadim, like it kind of means like happy holiday season, but it's Moadim. It's this word for just like the middle days, the sort of holiday days that don't have a particular elevated status of Yom Tov. But maybe we should use it for the whole year. Moadim L'Simcha. It actually doesn't say anything about days. It could apply to any period of time. We spoke about in the past how Shavua, we usually translate that as a week, like have a good week, Shavua Tov. But Shavua in many Jewish texts refers to the flow of 7 years, like a week of years, a 7 set of years. And so the fourth, or the third through fifth even, which we talked about the beginning of the middle, the middle of the middle, next year will be the end of the middle. This is the Moadim. So Moadim L'Simcha to everybody. We hope that you will have a beautiful experience of soaking into this middle zone, of noticing the things in your life that's probably most things in your life, right? That are not fresh, brand spanking new, and also not in their final sunset moments, but rather in that period of time where we have to do the most work to maintain them, to sustain them, to use the sustainability word you used before. So Moadim L'Simcha to everybody. We hope that you'll experience the rest of Elul with us. We're actually in the middle of Elul. So we hope that we'll be able to see you at our second Shabbat gathering, our second of 3, which is, again, a median. We hope that we'll see you there in just a few days on Friday, September 12th.
It's also in the kind of the middle of the day.
Yeah, we're doing this one in the afternoon. So we've really soaked into this middle symbology, but we're looking forward to connecting with you. We hope that if you haven't yet, that you sign up for our email list where you'll get amazing, juicy resources to deepen your relationship to all the things we're talking about. But we're so grateful to experience this with you. If you have ideas for what this median year, this Moadim year, this 4th year out of 7 could look like, please send those to us. You can email Elul, E-L-U-L, @JudaismUnbound.com. We'd love to hear from you. And mostly, have a wonderful rest of the week. Have a wonderful time soaking into Elul. And with that, this has been Judaism Unbound.